You're about to uncover a secret that no one wants you to know. A remote tribe forgotten by the media, carrying knowledge so advanced, even NASA can't explain it. They knew about invisible stars, described celestial orbits in detail before telescopes even existed. But how could that be possible? They claim they were taught by beings from the stars, aquatic entities, with strange appearances, from a place where time bends and words mean nothing without vibration. And the scariest part? These beings promise to return. Are they just myths? Or are we facing the first documented contact between humans and aliens? If what you're about to see is true, and all signs point that it is, then everything you've been taught about history, science, and spirituality is about to collapse. Because the Dogon people didn't just believe, they knew. And maybe the real question is, why have they kept this from you for so long? Are you ready to see what's been hiding in plain sight? There's a tribe in the West African region of Mali that has carried a secret for centuries, a secret mainstream history dares not explain. The Dogon, simple in appearance but profound in wisdom, knew about stars invisible to the naked eye, like Sirius B, long before modern telescopes confirmed their existence. But how could they know this without technology, or contact with the outside world? That question has haunted scientists and seekers for decades. More than just tribal myths, the Dogon described the elliptical orbit of a white dwarf star, long before European astronomers even knew it existed. They claim this knowledge came from beings who came from the sky. The Nommos, described as aquatic, intelligent, and non-human. Some say it's symbolic, but what if it's not? What if this was actual contact with something not from this world? An ancient UFO disguised as myth? Think about it. A tribe with no electricity, no star maps, yet with detailed knowledge of distant star systems. Does that sound like coincidence? Or like a carefully planned download of knowledge by aliens? Maybe this is just a fragment of something bigger, an echo from the past, or perhaps from the future. And what if this isn't the only clue the Dogon left behind? The Dogon don't just mention the Nommos. They revere them as masters who descended from the stars in a fiery vessel, shaking the earth and terrifying the skies. Though wrapped in tribal symbolism, this account lines up closely with modern-day UFO landing reports. But it's the form of the Nommos that raises eyebrows. Amphibious beings, half fish, half human. Ring any bells? Ancient Mesopotamia spoke of the god Oannes, a similar aquatic figure. This motif, beings from the sky with fish-like forms who teach astronomy and farming, repeats across civilizations. According to the Dogon, the Nommos came from a planet orbiting Sirius B. That planet, they said, was mostly covered in water. This would explain the beings' physical traits and their deep symbolic connection to water. But why Earth? What exactly were these aliens seeking here? Maybe they weren't just observing. Maybe they had a mission. Nearly every ancient mythology speaks of gods who taught, shaped, and then vanished. What if the Nommos were part of an ancestral race spreading knowledge across the globe? Could their appearance in Africa be just one piece of a much larger cosmic puzzle, waiting to be unlocked? Long before modern science confirmed it, the Dogon spoke of not one, but 3 Sirius stars, Sirius A, B, and a third, Sirius C, which scientists have only recently begun speculating might exist. They described this third star as small, dense, and moving in complex patterns. How did a primitive tribe know this? Their insights remain a thorn in the side of conventional astronomy. They even knew about the extreme density of Sirius B, a star so heavy, no man could lift even a handful of its matter, they said. That matches perfectly with what we now know about white dwarfs. This isn't just folklore, it's science embedded in mythology, passed down through generations. But did they invent it, or were they told? And if they were told, then by whom? Aliens traveling through the stars, who didn't come to conquer, but to teach. Perhaps the Dogon's astronomy isn't an outlier, but a piece of a larger pattern. A signal that other civilizations might have received too, but that was erased, buried, or never understood. Some researchers suggest a direct link between the Dogon and ancient Egypt, especially in spiritual practices and their use of symbols to represent celestial deities. Spirals, serpents, and cosmic boats appear in both cultures, and neither culture treats them as mere metaphor. These are depictions of celestial journeys and beings descending from the sky. Coincidence? Hardly. The Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris is centered on the Sirius star, just like the Dogon narratives. But while Egypt institutionalized this knowledge through religion, the Dogon preserved it in raw form, as actual contact with beings from a specific point in the cosmos. UFOs, gods, or cosmic messengers. The label doesn't matter. What matters is the pattern. And that pattern, of beings traveling the stars, sharing knowledge and vanishing, echoes across Earth's oldest civilizations. But what would happen if we assembled all these fragments? What if instead of isolated myths, we're looking at an interconnected timeline, guided by a constant, mysterious presence? Now imagine walking through a remote African village and finding stone carvings that depict stars, planets, and orbits with stunning precision. That's exactly what exists among the Dogon. Their caves hold representations of the Sirius system and other constellations, created long before any exposure to Western astronomy. These aren't just doodles, they're star maps. So the question is, who taught them to carve the sky into stone? Their drawings include not just Sirius, but Jupiter and its moons, Saturn's rings, and celestial movements we only recently confirmed with spacecraft. It's as if someone directly transferred this cosmic knowledge into their minds, a kind of celestial download. From what source? Possibly aliens. So are these records symbolic, or are they visual documents left behind by an advanced starfaring civilization? And when you compare these stones to Mayan glyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs, or the Nazca lines, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Civilizations recording something from above, something with form, purpose, and a message. The real question is, what were the Dogon trying to warn us about? And did they leave more clues, still hidden in plain sight? For the Dogon, the sky isn't just a background, it's a living extension of the Earth. Their most sacred ceremony, the Sigi, happens every 60 years and aligns perfectly with the orbital cycle of Sirius B, 60 years, exactly the time that star takes to orbit. How could a primitive tribe calculate this without tools? The answer may not lie in science books, but in something far more otherworldly. During these rituals, they wear massive masks representing star beings and cosmic movements. Some costumes resemble helmets or spacesuits. At first it may seem absurd, even laughable. But look closer. Tubes, domes, large black eyes. Is it really tribal art, or reenactments of what they actually saw? A way to honor visitors, who came from the sky in what we'd now call UFOs. These signs are there, for those willing to see. What if their rituals are more than religious tradition? What if they are symbolic performances of real contact with beings from another world? If so, these events aren't folklore, they're living records. And maybe the reason they continue to this day is because the Dogon know the story isn't over yet. Unlike modern societies that rely on cloud storage and hard drives, the Dogon rely on voice, ritual, and symbols. They use geometric patterns, circular designs, and ritual structures that function like a visual language, almost like coded messages waiting to be decrypted. Sounds exaggerated? Think again. Ancient cultures like the Sumerians and Egyptians did the same. What if the Dogons did it too, but with even more mystery? Their symbols often mirror the cosmos. Spirals for stellar motion, zigzags resembling waves or vibrations, and humanoid shapes that could easily be interpreted as depictions of aliens. It's as if they encoded their skyborn knowledge into shapes meant to last. Maybe they didn't draw what they imagined. Maybe they recorded what they remembered. Now think, if you were an advanced civilization and wanted to send a message to the future, would you leave a USB stick, a textbook, or timeless symbols etched into nature? Maybe the Dogon did exactly that, preserving what couldn't be said aloud. What if these codes match symbols found elsewhere on Earth? What happens if we piece them together? Looking at the Dogon in isolation makes the mystery feel local. But when you compare their stories to those of the Sumerians, Egyptians, Aboriginal Australians, and even the Mayans, a darker truth begins to surface. All of them speak of gods who came from the sky, taught knowledge, transformed the world, and then vanished. Were these gods actually the same beings, just called different names? UFOs filtered through culture, or a single race of aliens traveling the ancient Earth? The symbols repeat: flying serpents, large-eyed beings, disc-shaped artifacts, landing patterns. How can that repetition exist in civilizations that supposedly never met? Science calls it coincidence. But do you really believe that? What if mythology isn't fiction, but censorship in disguise? Now imagine if we collected all these fragments like a cosmic puzzle. What would we find? a hidden truth the system tries to bury, or a revelation that changes how we view everything. Humanity, origin, and destiny. Maybe the real clues aren't in space, but in the past. And maybe the Dogons are just the beginning. It's ironic, isn't it? With all its advanced tools, modern science still seems to trail behind what ancient cultures already knew. Astronomers spent centuries trying to understand Sirius B, while the Dogon had the details long before telescopes even existed. Doesn't that seem off? Their knowledge continues to baffle even the most skeptical researchers. Some academics try to dismiss it, claiming the Dogon learned it from European anthropologists. But that theory crumbles. The stories are too old, the details too specific, and the timelines don't match. It's much more plausible that their knowledge came from a more advanced source. Something airborne, something not from here. OVNIs, aliens, call it what you want. The signs are undeniable. If modern science is only now discovering what the Dogon preserved for centuries, then maybe we've been looking in the wrong direction. The real question isn't how did they know, but who taught them? And what if science does know the answer, but is keeping it from us? If this is all so incredible, why isn't everyone talking about the Dogon? Why no headlines, no primetime documentaries, no serious debates in universities? Simple, because this story doesn't fit the official narrative. A remote African tribe, with knowledge of invisible stars, orbital mechanics, and cosmic entities. That's too dangerous for those who want to control the truth. Academia treats the Dogon like an awkward stain, and the media, silence. Because admitting that a so-called primitive culture had contact with aliens would destroy everything, from our ideas of evolution to the notion that we are alone, and it would force institutions to reevaluate centuries of tightly held beliefs. But what happens when the silence breaks? When people begin connecting dots, asking questions, and digging deeper, that's when the system begins to tremble. And maybe that's why you're here, watching this. Because something inside you already knows, the Dogon were just the beginning. While the modern world relies on digital backups and cloud drives, the Dogon rely on memory, repetition, and ritual. Their stories are passed down with astonishing accuracy. They don't just remember, they live the stories. They sing, dance, and reenact them as if they happened yesterday. And maybe they did, because some memories aren't past. They're encoded in the soul. This is where oral tradition becomes a hidden superpower. It's immune to censorship, fire, and digital deletion. It's a kind of human hard drive, passed quietly through generations. And many of these traditions tell of glowing lights in the sky, strange beings descending, and sudden disappearances. What once sounded like superstition now reads like close encounters with OVNIs. So how many other cultures were silenced or mocked because they remembered too much? What if oral tradition is the one thing keeping ancient truths from being erased? Maybe that's why the Dogons still perform their ceremonies, not for nostalgia, but for protection. Because someday someone, like you, would listen and finally understand. To the Dogon, the sacred and the scientific are not separate. Their myths speak of ships descending from the stars, beings who controlled time and knew human biology in depth. But they didn't call it technology. They called it divine power. And maybe that's the key. What we now see as cutting-edge science may have once been interpreted as magic. In the end, is there even a difference? This overlap shows up globally. The Vedas mention flying vimanas. The Mayans speak of sky ladders. The Bible tells of flaming chariots. The Dogon, thrones descending from the stars, carrying the Nommos. It's a repeating pattern. UFOs described in spiritual language, because that's how ancient people made sense of what they witnessed. And today, science still hesitates to acknowledge those accounts. But what if these encounters were both religious and technological? What if aliens aren't just physical, but also spiritual? Maybe what we call spirituality is just a branch of science we haven't grasped yet, one the Dogon may have touched, and that we are only now beginning to rediscover. If the Dogon hold such advanced and unexplainable knowledge, why aren't they center stage in our textbooks, museums, or history classes? The answer stings, because their story breaks the system. An African tribe, with no modern instruments, detailing celestial mechanics and contact with beings from space. That flips everything upside down. Western thinking has long dismissed civilizations that didn't have tall buildings or written scrolls. But what if the real knowledge was never written, but sung, carved, and danced? The Dogon weren't forgotten by chance. They were silenced, because they carry a nuclear truth, direct interaction with aliens who came, taught, and maybe never left. Now stop and ask, how many other tribes were erased because they knew too much? How many myths were rewritten to hide reality? Maybe the real question isn't why were the Dogon forgotten, but who else is still hiding in history's shadows, waiting to be found? Some say the Nommos left, but what if they didn't? What if they're still here, watching from a distance, maybe not in plain sight, or maybe exactly there, hidden in plain view? The Dogon never said the visitors vanished forever. They said they'd return when the cycle completes. And guess what? The next Sigi cycle is approaching. Coincidence or countdown? The idea that these beings might still walk among us sounds like sci-fi. But consider this, with all our satellites, drones and radars, we still can't explain thousands of UFO sightings every year. Does that sound like coincidence or presence? A presence that's ancient, quiet, and everywhere. And what if the Dogon know exactly when and where it'll happen again? What if their ceremonies aren't just rituals, but activation codes? Maybe we're not waiting for them. Maybe they're waiting for us, because the return won't be fireworks. It'll be a test, and only those prepared will understand. The Dogon still perform the same rituals they did centuries ago. This isn't just tradition, it's memory. They speak of cosmic cycles, of return, of warnings, and they do so with the certainty of those who saw, who felt, who remember. Still think this is folklore. Maybe humanity's biggest mistake is ignoring what's right in front of us. While we search for alien signals in deep space, the Dogon already have the map. A cosmic one, carved into dances, masks, and chants. Knowledge you can't learn in a lab, only by listening to the echoes of space. And when you really listen, their message feels strangely familiar. What if the Dogon are the link between what we were and what we're becoming? What if all we need to do is pay attention, look deeper, and realize the contact already happened? Maybe it's no longer about asking, when will aliens arrive? Maybe the real question is, when will we stop pretending we haven't already seen them? If what you've heard made your skin crawl, it's because something inside you already knows we're not alone. The Dogon left warnings, in dance, in ritual, in stone. Silent screams passed across generations, waiting for someone to finally connect the dots. Now you know, so what will you do with it? Will you keep believing it's all coincidence? Will you ignore the same patterns appearing all over the world? Or will you wake up to a universe far stranger than school ever taught you? Because maybe contact has already begun, and only a few are truly ready. The ones who feel, the ones who seek, the ones who refuse to settle. Tell me in the comments, do you believe the Dogon really connected with beings from another world? And if they did, could those beings still be here? If you want to keep uncovering truths they tried to hide from us, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and get ready, because the next video might blow your mind even more.